Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a massive pop culture buzzword that gets thrown around, well, literally every day, and we're breaking it down into some genuinely fascinating scientific truths. We're going to dive deep and figure out the actual psychology of narcissism. So, if you've ever dealt with a difficult personality or you're just wondering what this term actually means in a clinical sense, you are absolutely in the right place.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with 1, the myth and the mind, then look at 2, two faces of narcissism, before examining 3, narcissistic personality disorder. Next, we'll explore the root causes in 4, nature, nurture, and culture, and finally wrap up with 5, pathways to improvement.
All right, Section 1, the myth and the mind.
So who took the first selfie? Okay, yeah, it's a bit of a playful question, but way before the smartphone era, the ancient Greeks and Romans actually had a myth about a guy who was fatally obsessed with his own image.
The story goes that this handsome wanderer named Narcissus rejected a nymph named Echo. He then caught a glimpse of his own reflection in a river and fell deeply, madly in love with it. He literally couldn't tear himself away, and he ended up drowning. And a flower marked the spot where he died, which, you guessed it, we still call the Narcissus. It's a tragic myth, but it perfectly captures this basic idea of elevated, detrimental self-involvement.
But here's the thing. Narcissism isn't just some advice column buzzword. It's actually a specific set of traits formally studied by psychologists. The whole definition centers on an inflated, grandiose self-image. Basically, to varying degrees, narcissistic individuals genuinely believe they are better looking, smarter, and just far more important than everyone else around them. And naturally, that leads to this intense belief that they deserve special treatment.
Moving right along to Section 2, two faces of narcissism.
Most folks have no idea that psychologists actually recognize 2 completely distinct forms of this trait. There's grandiose narcissism. This is the familiar one, right? Extroversion, dominance, relentless attention-seeking. These are the folks actively pursuing power and status. But then there's vulnerable narcissism. These individuals can actually be quiet, even reserved. They still have that massive sense of entitlement, but they are incredibly easily threatened or slighted. So not all narcissists are loud and boisterous. Some are quietly seething when they don't get the VIP treatment they think they deserve.
But here is the absolutely crucial point. Regardless of which type a person has, the dark side always rears its ugly head over the long haul. We're talking selfish actions, risky or flat-out unethical decisions in leadership, and dishonesty in partners. And what happens when their rosy view of themselves is finally challenged? Oh boy, they often become deeply resentful and highly aggressive.
All right, Section 3, narcissistic personality disorder.
Now we're crossing the threshold from everyday personality traits into a severe clinical condition. Just think about this quote. It's like a disease where the sufferers feel pretty good, but the people around them suffer. Imagine a colleague or a spouse who just uses you as a source of attention rather than, actually caring about you. That intense collateral damage, that's the real hallmark of the extreme disorder.
But what's really fascinating here is how rare the actual disorder is. Taken to the clinical extreme, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, affects just 1 to 2% of the population, and it's actually diagnosed more commonly in adult men. It's important to note, too, that this is specifically reserved for adults. Young people can be totally self-centered, sure, but that's kind of just a normal part of growing up.
So how do doctors make it official? The DSM-5 outlines these exact traits: a grandiose view of oneself, severe problems with empathy, a massive sense of entitlement, and this insatiable need for admiration. Now, it only crosses the line into a true personality disorder when these behaviors completely hijack a person's life and cause massive, unavoidable problems for them and everyone in their orbit.
Let's dig into the root causes in Section 4, nature, nurture, and culture.
So where does this actually come from? Well, biology for sure plays a role. Twin studies reveal a remarkably strong genetic component to narcissism. Though, full disclosure, the exact science is still a bit of a mystery. Researchers don't know the specific genes involved just yet.
But environment matters just as much. Look at how different extremes in parenting directly foster the 2 faces of narcissism we talked about earlier. Parents who constantly put their kid on a pedestal, that can inadvertently foster that loud, attention-seeking, grandiose narcissism. On the flip side, cold, controlling parents can contribute to the quiet, easily threatened traits of vulnerable narcissism. It's just a fascinating look at cause and effect, right?
And we can't ignore the broader environment, our culture. Cultures that really value individuality see way higher rates of these traits. Take the US, for example. The communal focus of the 1960s eventually gave way to the self-esteem movement and materialism of the 1970s, which tracked perfectly with a steady rise in narcissism. And that brings us to today, the social media era, literally multiplying the chances for self-promotion.
Now hold on, before we start pointing fingers at our smartphones, you should know there is actually no clear evidence that social media causes narcissism. Like, the traits don't just magically appear because you downloaded an app. Actually, scratch that. It's more like social media just gives individuals who are already narcissistic an incredibly powerful tool to seek out the status and attention they're already craving. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Pathways to Improvement. Can narcissists actually improve on those negative traits? Man, it is the ultimate, desperate question for anyone who has ever dealt with a narcissistic partner or boss. Are they just doomed to be this way forever, or can they actually change? Well, the really encouraging answer here is yes, absolutely. Anything that successfully promotes honest reflection on their own behavior and genuine compassion towards others can spark positive change. Psychotherapy is a huge tool for this, along with just actively practicing caring for other people. The capacity for change is 100% there. But, and it's a big but, starting therapy is one thing. Genuine growth requires looking at oneself truthfully from an unflattering angle, which goes completely against the core of an inflated self-image. It's literally the hardest thing for a narcissist to do. It really leaves us with something to think about. In a modern culture that constantly encourages us to be the star of our own movie, how many of us are quietly losing our empathy in the pursuit of applause? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gives you a much clearer lens the next time you encounter these traits out in the wild.